I realized I had been deceived during the first New Year's after marrying my husband, James. While helping with the holiday meal in the kitchen, my sister-in-law Emily made a snide comment.
Susan, are you bad at cooking? Make the presentation nicer, it's killing my appetite.
I am no culinary genius, that's for sure. I struggle with presentations, but I was doing my best. Still, I thought it was unnecessary for her to call me out like that, especially with other female relatives around. I'm sorry. I usually don't pay much attention to that. I would appreciate some guidance. Just as I sincerely asked for help, my mother-in-law Tiffany interrupts and says to me,
Plating food is basic, right? Especially when it's James' favorite dish. You've never cooked it at home, so you don't have a sense of how to plate it, do you? Poor James. He married a wife who can't even cook properly.
There's a reason you have been divorced before, you know.
Did your ex-husband cheat on you because he got tired of your bad cooking and careless personality?
Tiffany and Emily took turns making these comments and finally walked away looking annoyed. They complained but never actually helped. Instead, another female relative stepped in to assist me. What surprised me more than being criticized for my lack of cooking skills was the drastic change in their attitude towards me. 6 months ago, I remarried. After divorcing my cheating ex-husband 2 years ago, I met James, who is younger than me. We hit it off and quickly started talking about marriage. Both James and I love spending time outdoors, so we went fishing and camping together. We decided to get married. James is active but kind, and I felt comfortable around him. I was worried whether his family would accept me, a divorcee. But when I visited his family home, they welcomed me warmly, and my worries vanished.
It's nice to meet you, Susan. If you're okay with our son, please marry him. Good for you, James. You found a kind wife.
I had some interactions with my previous husband's family, but we never got close. They were wealthy and formal, and I, being an ordinary person, couldn't fully understand their values. So I was honestly worried about getting along with this new family. But I thought everything would be fine since they welcomed me warmly. That sense of security must have been fake. Throughout my stay, Tiffany and Emily kept bad-mouthing me. I was shocked by their change in attitude. On the night of January 3rd, I finally returned home and felt relieved to the point of tears. Then, in August, during the summer vacation, my husband suggested going back to his family home, but now my anger and sadness had faded, and I thought maybe they were just stressed out at that time. It's not very popular to drag on and complain about the past few days. I was still a bit scared of Tiffany and Emily, but I thought I could manage for a few days. So I decided to accompany my husband back to his family home. Let's buy lots of gifts to make them happy. If I bring gifts, we'll surely have a pleasant conversation. I thought that the New Year's incident was just a bad dream. I kept thinking that until we arrive at my in-laws' home, which is in a coastal town in the neighboring state. We drove half the day, and due to traffic, we arrived in the evening.
Welcome home, James. Susan.
Tiffany smiled warmly, happy to see her son after a long time. She also gave me a kind smile. Emily, standing next to Tiffany, accepted the gifts and thanked me with a smile. I felt relieved. I was right. That day, they were just in a bad mood.
James. Dad and the uncles are at their usual bar. Why don't you join them? They all seem to want to see you.
Really? Hey, Susan, want to come along?
James asked me gently. I was planning to go, but Tiffany stopped me.
Oh, we were planning to have a girls-only time. Thought Susan might enjoy that more.
If that's the case, go ahead, James. Have fun. James looked like he wanted to say something, but eventually left alone saying,
if Susan is okay with it.
After seeing off James, I tidied up a bit and headed to the living room for the girls-only time that Tiffany mentioned. Tiffany, since it's girls-only, is there something I should do? When I asked Tiffany, she happily replied,
I was thinking of making some tea. Could you pick some herbs from the garden? The ones with white flowers? Oh, Susan, while you're at it, could you feed the dog?
They have a large dog at their home. The dog is gentle and has taken a liking to me, which is adorable. I have always wanted a dog but couldn't afford one as a child, so I was genuinely happy to take care of the dog. Sure, I'll head to the garden. I took a bowl for the herbs and a plate for the dog food, put on my sandals and went out to the garden. Immediately after, I heard the sound of a lock. I turned around in a panic. Tiffany and Emily were watching me through the window smirking. That's when I realized I had been tricked by Tiffany and Emily again. They had intentionally given me a task outside. They even sent James away and kept me here under the guise of a girls-only time, all to lock me out? Tiffany and Emily are terrible people who take pleasures in such childish malice. They ridiculed me for being a divorcee and bad at cooking during New Year's, but that was just talk. This time they actually locked me out. Come on, this is a joke, right? Let me in. I knocked on the window, but Tiffany and Emily didn't even touch it.
A woman like you, raised by a single parent and bad at housework, doesn't belong in our home. We don't need to feed you or give you a place to sleep. If you still want to stay, why not sleep in the doghouse?
It's a large doghouse. They're suggesting that someone as petite as me could fit in there?
Hilarious, Susan. You've become a dog.
Emily clapped her hands and laughed. This is cruel. Stop it, please. But they just laughed and didn't lock the door. I wondered how to get back inside but realized that even if they let me in, they would probably continue to mistreat me. Then it hit me. My car keys were still in my pocket. If I can't go inside the house or join my husband, I can just kill time outside, I thought. I took something out of the car and quickly set it up. Tiffany and Emily, surprised by the noise outside, opened the curtains to see what was going on.
What on earth is she doing?
Tiffany covered her mouth in astonishment, and for good reason. What I had taken out of the car and set up was a tent we used on last week's camping trip. They probably never expected me to opt for outdoor comfort.
Stop it, you are ruining the lawn. You are so rude. You are never setting foot in this house again.
Ignoring Tiffany and Emily, I decided to make myself some hot coffee on a small camping stove I had left in the car. Even though it's summer, it had been cloudy all day and it got quite chilly as night fell. It's a season for iced coffee, but hot coffee felt more satisfying. Before I knew it, the family dog who had come out of the doghouse came over to warm up by the fire. Sorry for the noise. Oh, right. I was supposed to feed you, wasn't I? Here you go. I put the plate of dog food I had left on the ground in front of him, and he started eating with gusto. When I petted him, he let out a happy little bark. I thought I had no allies in this house, but with this big, gentle dog here, I knew I would be okay until my husband returned. But my husband had left in the evening. If he's drinking, he won't be back for a while. Let's go into the tent. You can come too. I lay down in the tent with the dog. I petted the dog sitting next to me and noticed that despite his fluffy fur, he was quite thin. It must have been a long time since he had been petted, as he was snorting happily. Maybe this dog doesn't get much attention? Is this the first time he's been petted in a while? He seemed really happy. I started to worry more about this dog than about myself. Shall we go find them? No point staying here. The dog probably didn't understand my words, but when I spoke, he barked and seemed to nudge me forward. I folded up the tent, got in the car with the dog, and drove into town. I parked the car in a random lot and walked around the town with the dog. There are so many bars, it's hard to tell, I said to the dog as we walked, but he led the way. However, I heard familiar voices coming from a bar in the direction the dog was heading. It was my father-in-law Thomas and James. The dog must have led me here by recognizing their scents or voices. Sure enough, when I entered the bar, my husband looked surprised.
Susan, what are you doing here? And you brought the dog?
I felt a sense of relief at finally seeing another human, but there was something else I needed to address. Is this place pet-friendly? Can the dog and I come in? The bar's policy was against it, but Thomas and his relatives were regulars, so they made an exception.
Susan, it must have been cold outside. Here, have a drink.
I took a sip from the glass that was handed to me. Delicious, not just the drink, but the kindness of my husband's relatives, who were meeting me for the first time, warmed my heart. I kept drinking as they encouraged me to have another glass and another, and soon I felt the alcohol taking effect. When you're tipsy, you start to say things you have been holding back. Tiffany and Emily locked us out, so we had no choice but to come here, I said. I couldn't stop talking about what happened today and on New Year's. I might be judged for it. If I were sober, I might have worried about that. But I was drunk and didn't care, and everyone, including my husband and Thomas, listened intently. After I finished speaking, one of the relatives said, "Again?
Those two are at it again?
That triggered a flood of stories about Tiffany and Emily.
They did the same thing when they were supposed to be taking care of James's grandmother. She eventually moved into a nursing home because she couldn't take it anymore. And it's not just that. They don't even take care of that dog. They leave it all to their husbands."
When the uncle said that, Thomas finally spoke up.
"I thought about divorcing them when they mistreated my mother, but what they did to you, my son's wife, is unforgivable. I can't take it anymore."
Thomas stood up. When we returned home, Thomas finally confronted Tiffany and Emily.
"Let's get a divorce. Leave now."
But Tiffany and Emily fought back.
Susan is also to blame. She set up a tent and even took the dog into town. That's so unreasonable.
I don't see it that way. Kicking someone out into the cold is what's unreasonable. What do you think family is? I wanted to get along with you, but I have reached my limit. I don't want to consider people like you as family. Tiffany and Emily glared at me, but then they screamed. The dog had growled at them. Thomas spoke as if he were looking at something pathetic.
"You never took care of that dog. You didn't feed him or walk him. You're not even worthy of being his owner. It serves you right to be growled at. You're not part of this family. Leave now."
Thomas made them pack their bags and kick them out regardless of the time. Tiffany and Emily left without arguing, probably because Thomas was so intimidating. They didn't have much in terms of assets, so they ended up living in a small apartment to save money. But they were spendthrifts to begin with, so they soon ran into financial difficulties. Not only does Tiffany have to worry about everyday expenses, but she also has to pay alimony. She's probably struggling with Emily, both of them working hard at jobs they're not used to. As for me, with Tiffany and Emily gone, my husband and I decided to move in with Thomas so he wouldn't be lonely. Changing jobs was a concern, but I found a new one sooner than expected, so that was a relief. Since moving, life has been joyful every day with kind-hearted Thomas, my loving husband, and our pet dog, who's become like a friend to me. Relatives also started visiting more often. Surrounded by lively people who love alcohol, learning about various delicious drinks and enjoying conversation over drinks has become one of my hobbies.